I agree. I'm excited to be here with you today, Paris, for our seventh episode of Anybody's Game. This has been, it's almost 2 months. So by now it's a habit, right?
I don't believe in that. I've done plenty of things for 90 days that have never become habits, and even longer. They're still not habits. They're still a chore. But you know what? It's a good question. We'll ask our guest today an impromptu question of how long it takes to form a habit, in her opinion.
I love it.
Do you want to start us off, Jonathan, and then I'll intro her?
Yeah, I do. So for those in the room, thank you so much for joining us. This is a show that Paris Mansouri and myself do every single week on Tuesdays at 6 o'clock. And we're actually live on a bunch of different platforms. So we are on Clubhouse right now. We are on Twitter. We're on YouTube. And we are on LinkedIn. So if you are on any of those channels, please write a comment. Tell us where you're listening from. And also ask a question. So I want to start seeing, hopefully, in the comments where you're all listening from. Would love to see it. And as questions come up, or if you want to just join in the conversation, that's a great place to do it. You can just click on my bio and you can see the Twitter conversation there. We're in the Founder Streams Club. Founder Streams is all about founders, investors, startups. We do tons of rooms in Clubhouse. We do tons of content all throughout. We're even having an accelerator that's happening right now as we speak. That's halfway through. We have with our second cohort, and Paris and I just like to talk to really interesting people. So with that, Paris, I'll kick it off to you, and you can let us know what we're here for.
Absolutely. So like you mentioned, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, we are speaking with leading content creators, leaders in their industry, essentially, and finding out how they did it and what it takes to stay ahead of the game. And, you know, entrepreneurs, philanthropists, we're going to be having performers and athletes and subject matter experts. You know, basically the opportunities are endless in this day and age. And in a world driven by content, we're going to find out if it's anybody's game. And this week, we are joined by Tiffany McGhee. I am such a fan of hers. I'm going to try not to fangirl too much, but it's a pleasure to see her on Clubhouse. And if you are not familiar with her face or her name, you should know that she's a CNBC contributor. She's a chief executive officer and chief investment officer of Pivotal Advisors. She is the founder of StocSavvy. She is a leader who's been pivotal in the success of the companies she's been involved with. She works the teams that she works with and leads, and, you know, from chairing committees, overseeing investment research, like reading off the list, managing due diligence for, you know, one organization. Then she's the founding partner of another organization. She's worked in private banking. She's managed over $7 billion in assets and relationships, you know, since the beginning of her career. She is not only recognized and respected as a source of financial news, but her knowledge and her expertise have been crucial in the development of founders and startups across industries. And tonight, we're going to find out what it takes to make it in business. And I can't think of another better person to speak with. You know, basically how to work your way in, how to work your way up, how to start on your own after you've, you know, worked for other organizations, and really the best way to get financially educated, because as we all know, most of us didn't get the best of that education in school. So Tiffany, welcome to the show. Are you ready? Because we have a lot to cover.
I am ready, Paris. That was such an introduction. I was like, who's she talking about? I'm like, this is super cool. I want to meet her.
You are super cool. And honestly, this is a 1 hour interview. To anyone who's new to the room, we try to keep it at an hour. Sometimes we go like 5 minutes over. But with somebody like Tiffany on stage, we could go on for hours and we can't waste a moment. So I'm going to get right into it, Tiffany. So in a world, this is the first question we ask all our guests. In a world driven by media and content and social media and what we see online, it drives our communication, the marketing, our culture. Do you think it's possible to make it, whether you're a journalist or a subject matter expert or basically anyone? Can you gain an audience? Is it anybody's game in today's day and age?
Yeah, I think now more than ever, it's anybody's game. I mean, I think back to like when I was a little kid. Oh, that's right. Sorry. Yeah, no, I think now more than ever, it is anybody's game, right? It's like this, our current environment. I mean, look at all that we have, like all the social media channels that we have. I think about when I was like a little kid and we didn't have like social media. Like nobody was, nobody had YouTube, nobody had, Clubhouse, none of these things. And so I think that it is like the time we are living in right now is virtually perfect, right? So if you, and really anybody who wants to do anything, whether you're really an expert or not even really an expert, or just saying that you're an expert, you have so many platforms to really show your expertise, to talk about, what you know, how you know it, how to do it, to teach, to spread the gospel, to do whatever. So yeah, now it's like a perfect time.
Yeah, I love that, Tiffany, and I think you're proof in that. And I've super enjoyed getting to know you over the last couple months. And again, thanks for joining us. So, you're a CNBC contributor. That doesn't happen overnight. There obviously is a level of credibility that needs to happen before you could even get considered to be a CNBC contributor. And you drop some fantastic thoughts and advice and gems on CNBC. How did you do it? How did you get started? How did that all come about?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it actually kind of did happen overnight, right? So I wasn't trying to be a CNBC contributor. I feel like if you'd asked me, a couple of years before, if I wanted to be on TV, I probably would have said, yeah, that sounds like it's, a really cool idea. And I could even actually think back probably about like 2 years ago to, I'm in, my firm is based in New York, and I live in Maryland, but I've been back and forth to New York, like literally every other week for like the past, 5 years, right? So just like grinding it out. And I know a couple people at Bloomberg, and I was having a talk with someone at Bloomberg, and I said, hey, I'd like, you guys need like content, right? Like, how do I get to be, somebody who you guys call for financial information? And he was not even really connected to like the TV portion of Bloomberg. And he was like, yeah, that's like not going to happen. And I'm like, okay. I was a little bit upset by his reaction. Didn't even want to try, but kind of flash forward to 2020. CNBC was kind of asking around, and apparently, all of like the networking that I've done and just being really, really loud about what I do. They happened to ask someone in the Urban League, in the CEO of the Urban League, in his office, who they could put on TV. And because they really wanted diversity. And they asked somebody else, and they're like, oh, wait, Tiffany. And so I literally was sitting here in my kitchen counter where, everything happens. And I got a call. It was like a Tuesday or Wednesday in between Zoom meetings. And I got a call from the head of news at CNBC. And he said, this is the head of news at CNBC. And I was like, is that actually even a title? Like the head of news, right? It's like the head of everything. And so, yeah, he really just started interviewing me on the spot. Like, I mean, if I didn't have an hour in between Zoom meetings, I probably would have been a little bit more offended. But it was like a legit interview. And he had checked me out, sure, on social media and things like that. And by the end of like the 40-minute conversation, he was like, okay, what's your email address? And so I gave it to him. He's like, okay, I'll be in touch. And I thought I was never going to hear from him again. I had been on Bloomberg actually twice before then. That was a cool story too, but not actually, maybe been on Bloomberg maybe 3 times. And it was right around the time that, I guess we have like an hour, so I can kind of flesh it out, but right after George Floyd. And, what I do for a living is I invest portfolios for foundations and endowments, right? So I'm an investor, right? So that's private equity, that's venture, but also public markets too, so stocks and bonds. And we'd been looking at all of these companies that had come out and made these Black Lives Matter statements. And we were always paying attention to these companies, to like their boards and the diversity in their upper management. But even more so then, And so that's what I was talking about on Bloomberg. What's called ESG investing, environmental, social, and governance investing, taking those responsible metrics and incorporating them into your investment process. So I think that, I had a little bit something different to say, right? Not just buy this stock, but don't buy that stock. And it's what I had been saying and what I had been about for a very long time. And something about that resonated with them. And I reached out to them and I said, hey, are you talking about this on CNBC? Like, are you talking about all these Black Lives Matter statements? Are you talking about these companies that are making these statements, and are they putting their money where their mouth is? And I wrote this little show idea. And what I didn't even realize is I was already going to be on next week. So he said, yeah, there's a producer is going to call you next week. And I was like, okay. And so they reached out to me and they said, yeah, we'd love to have you on for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, which is a long time in TV time, right? 7 minutes is a long time. And so I think it's really important to note that, each show is different. Each show on CNBC is different. Each show on other networks are different. But it was a senior producer, Latina senior producer who reached out to me about being on Halftime, which is, by the way, like the #1 rated show on CNBC. I didn't know at the time. It probably would have made me nervous. And she worked with me. We did like an hour-long prep call. And I've spoken on panels before, but how do you take that message where you're on for like an hour-long panel and condense it into bullet points, and you know what I mean? So she really worked with me, and I'm to this day still appreciative of Patty, who I still work with. And as soon as I got off the air, as soon as the show was over, she called me and she says, oh, that was good. So we want to get some more of your thoughts. So she said, get out your calendar. I said, oh, for a prep call? And she says, no, we want to have you back on the show. And she booked me for like 3 more shows. Then after that, she booked me for like 5 more shows. And it became really, really obvious, because then it was like 15 minutes, and it was 20 minutes, and it was 35 minutes. Then it was 45 minutes, and it was the whole show. And, very quickly, I was like, I'm like the only one on here not getting paid. And so that's when like your village comes in, right? And I know you guys are great networkers, and people who knew, would say, look, they're going to offer you a contract. And it's like, okay, well, do I negotiate and all this kind of stuff? And so I had a great network in my corner to kind of help me through that. And it was really the funniest thing, because at the same time, because I wasn't exclusive to CNBC, Bloomberg wanted me on, Fox News or Fox Business, which is a little bit different, called me to be on, Yahoo Finance called me to be on. And so I asked the executive producer of Halftime, I was talking to him one day, I said, hey, like, are you guys cool with me being on other shows? Because at this point I was on pretty much like every week. And he's like, why? Who's calling you? And I was like, well, I think everybody. And so a week later, their head of talent called me, and she literally said, Tiffany, we're just so happy to have you. We want to offer you an exclusive contract so that you don't appear on our enemies' networks. And she used the word enemy. And I was like, okay, I'm in. So it was really cool. It was a really cool story. But that all happened in a pandemic, right? So I haven't really even been out in the world. I've never been in the studio, because everybody's still, podcasting in. So
it's incredible how sometimes things fall together in perfect timing. Now I'm wondering, how do you go about creating content now? Because when you're, like you said, 7 minutes, 8 minutes, half an hour, regardless of what it is, when you are a contributor and you have to come up with content. And again, we talk about content creation so much in this day and age, whether it's content on Instagram, whether it's your story, whether it's post on Twitter, we kind of have to be methodical, especially now that you are a public figure, especially now that what you say actually affects, well, not actually, everything we say affects how people think and act and perhaps react. But now there comes like a certain extra level of responsibility, perhaps, because you are accredited now under a major network. So how do you think about creating your content now?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I think I became really...
Just so everyone knows,
I'm just gonna leave it on.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna leave it on since it's just us talking. So I was saying that's a really good question. And I think, first I became really aware of what you're saying, that what I say actually matters. It was one of the first times I was on Halftime, and they had asked me, and by the way, like the whole show is produced, and I'll get into that in a second, but they had asked me for a pick about, like a stock pick, and my ideas around it. And I talked about a company called Purple that really hadn't been, it's a mattress company, Purple Innovation, and it really hadn't been talked about before. And I'm on there with Kevin O'Leary. That was a surprise from Shark Tank. It was really, really cool. And I'm in, if you watch the show, we're in boxes, and I'm like, yeah, I like Purple Innovation because of X, Y, Z, and it's great. And here's what they're doing in their management company. And and then Scott Wapner, who's the host, kicks it to Kevin and says, Kevin, Mr. Wonderful, what do you think about Purple? And Mr. Wonderful says, I missed the boat on that one. Tiffany's absolutely right. I'm just kicking myself. She's right. I'm wrong. I was wrong. And I'm like, okay. And so we're talking about this. And then I talk about it again. And then Scott says, yeah, well, Tiffany, good call. He says, shares of Purple up 10% since you've been talking. And I was like, okay, I didn't mean to do that. So as an investment professional, we're trained not to influence people, right? So that made me really, really nervous. Like, okay, I talked about it on national TV and the stock price is going up. And so that really made me nervous. And then, people will hit me up on Twitter and Instagram and say, hey, great picks. I bought this. You said this, I bought this. And I'm like, I don't want people to buy what I say. We're just having a conversation. So I became aware of a lot of like the responsibility of this. Like, this is like legit people's money. Like, I say something, not just me, but a lot of people. And if they like me or that they like my ideas, they'll buy it. So that made me really, really nervous. But it's a ton of responsibility. But when it comes to the show, I think content is a little bit easy, especially in my industry. I don't want to say easy, but there's always something going on in financial news, right? And there's really a schedule that I didn't create. So there's like right now, we're in the middle, we just kicked off earnings season today, right? So there's a schedule with that. Like that happens like every single quarter, there's earnings season, and it's about like, almost 2 months of companies reporting earnings. So I know the companies that I own, so that makes it a little bit easier, but you always have to have like a view. Because we're not only talking about individual stocks. It's about what's your broad market thought. And it's a challenge because it's like, I think the same thing that I thought last week, Scott, or 2 days ago, Scott. Like, it hasn't changed, but you have to come up with a different way to say it. And I always want to add value. So I think if there is a formula, it's understanding your industry, because I think in every industry, there's probably like a flow of information, a particular kind of flow of information, and understanding what that is. And having, number one, original thoughts, and being able to provide value, committing to providing value. But I'll tell you, like, I read a ton, like Saturday mornings, and I read every single day. Like, I'm reading analyst notes, and in addition to like the work that I'm doing, right? But it's a lot of prep, and then show prep for the show. I start before the day, but I get up at 6 a.m. in the morning of the show. The show comes on at 12 noon, and it is like prep, because what happened in like the overnight markets, and you have to know, and watching the markets like throughout the morning, who's hitting like all-time highs, what analysts changed their ratings, who reported earnings. And so it's really like, it's something that you have to always be prepping for, always be reading. But then like the actual day, like I don't do anything the morning, right? Like, no, don't call me. Don't expect me to be someplace, because we're like watching the markets, watching everything, because we have to be able to comment on it, because you don't want to be on air and someone says, oh, what do you think about Goldman Sachs earnings? And you go, yeah, they're cool. You know what I mean? Like, that would be like the worst thing ever. So yeah.
No, I love that, Tiffany, and congrats to you on being able to drive that through, and you're so pro and how you present yourself. I can only imagine it's a little easier for you. I'm just kidding, but I know how it is. So look. You're building not only like this personal brand with, being on CNBC and your picks and so forth, but it's also very reflective of your company, your investment advisory. And so just overall, how do you think about building brand, and are they one and the same with your business, or are they building brand separately?
Yeah, I think that, and again, like you guys are asking me some really good questions. But I think that they are kind of one and the same. And it's almost kind of like the different social media platforms. So I think I had like one post on Twitter before I was on CNBC. I had a Twitter account. I posted once. I had like 5 followers. But I understand, like, for me and my business, and the show that I'm on, the network that I'm on, that conversation lives on Twitter. So I have to post on Twitter. That's and of course it's like a different medium than, of course, Instagram. Instagram is where Tiffany lives, right? And like where I let people kind of into my world. And I didn't know that people gave a crap about what I did on the weekends, but apparently they do. And then, LinkedIn is something a little bit different. Of course, Clubhouse is something different. So there are all these, you have this persona, and I think people enjoy getting to know you as a founder. I mean, I'm a founder of 2 companies. I think people actually founder of 3, but I spun off from my last firm and started my my own firm. But and that was a little bit of challenge too. And Jonathan, we've talked about this because Pivotal is like the institutional investment firm. And that's very, very business. That's like JP Morgan, the Goldman Sachs kind of ish. Then I have StocSavvy, which is where I talk to women about investing and I kind of give them like the quick and dirty. And then, there's me and how do I build a brand? And I've learned over the past year that those 3 things can coexist. So I'm on, CNBC because I have Pivotal, because this is what I do for a living. And that makes me, I guess somebody thinks that I'm an expert in this. I kind of know what I'm doing, I think. But not everybody who watches me on CNBC is an institution. And so they want to be able to interact with me. And so I'm still kind of learning all of that, but I think I understand it a lot better than I did, a year ago. But I do believe that you have to think about branding yourself in all of these different channels and all these different ways. And, what you want to show to everyone. I know personally that when I talk to someone, like I'm really good when I talk to people, right? So I'm not good with, being in the shadows and like not posting. I'm good when I let people kind of into my world. That just works for me. I don't know if it works for everybody else, but I think really that, people who are going to be your customers or your followers, they want insight into who you are, what you do, kind of how you tick. I went live. I had never done an IG live before, but yesterday I was literally, I was on Closing Bell, literally kind of prepped a little bit more than I probably should have. When I'm on the other shows, I'm probably only on for maybe about 10, 15 minutes. And so I was just sitting here, had time to kill, doing my makeup, waiting to go on air. And I was like, oh, well, let me just go live. And then people were like, oh my gosh. I was like, I still can't believe that people care what I have to say. So I'm literally sitting there doing my makeup and people are like asking me questions about what I'm going to talk about and stocks and stuff like that. So it was really, really cool. So I was like, okay, all right, I'll do some more of these. But yeah, I think it's bringing people into like who you are.
I love that you're open to it because it can be extremely overwhelming and daunting as well, especially for somebody who hadn't done it. And considering you just said a few months ago you had one tweet on Twitter, and now not only has your audience grown, but now you have to you're curating your content depending on the platform that you're on. So I think it's really incredible and really cool to see somebody who fell into it later on in their career and not necessarily somebody who's been striving for numbers. It's just a natural progression. And so I would love to know what the best business advice you received and implemented early in your career that you think set you up for success. Like what's happening for you right now is a result of you having been excellent in the long game for them to recognize your ability in that one time that they had you on. You know what I mean? So it's built up to where you were able to get to this point so quickly. Like there's a long road to being an overnight success. So I'd love to know what business advice you received earlier on that you think helped set you up for the success you're seeing now.
Oh, there's so much, Paris. I think the big thing, and it's not necessarily business advice, but I think it's just like good life advice, is, always treat people with respect and treat people the way that you would want to be treated. I'm a person that really, really loves people. I love connecting with people. And I think that really is the main thing that is, put me in rooms and put me into positions and caused people to want to help me. Like I'm the product of people picking up the phone and making phone calls for me, right? Of people asking favors, of people, when they're asked, well, who do you know? I pop in their head. So that's what I am the product of. And I think that, one thing I always do, my dad always told me is, you treat people with respect and kindness, whether it is the person sweeping the floors or whether it is like the president of the company, whoever it is, you always treat people with kindness and dignity. And, that's just who I am. And then the second thing is, I think, especially as like women, but just like know your value. And that takes a little while to kind of figure out and to internalize. I used to discount a lot. And I think in the beginning, sometimes you have to discount. But I'm not discounting anything ever again. I mean, I literally had a situation, actually recently, where it's a high profile client organization looking for an advisory firm. I know that we're perfect for them. And you would think that they had more money than they did. And they didn't. And it just they really at the time didn't even fit our minimum. And I was like, how am I going to tell these people no? Like we've already responded to the RFP. We've already kind of made it to the second round. We're scheduling dates, and it's a, really high profile organization. And that was really hard for me, but I'll tell you who reminded me of this, Robert Smith, who has been very kind to me, founder of Vista, private equity firm, one of like the few Black billionaires in the country. And I'm just, grateful for his guidance. He's like, yeah, I told him, I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this because like they don't have a lot of money. And he's like, walk away. He said, walk away or tell them you have a minimum fee and make it something that, that it's actually like feasible for you. And so I was like, but this is, he's like, yeah, I know. He said, I would have walked away. And so I was like, okay. Cause I can't, you can't, clients, customers, depending on what kind of business, it's going to take me, I want to do a good job. And it's important that I do a good job for them. Because if I don't do a good job, that would be the worst thing. If I don't spend time with this client, and if they were to become a client and do an amazing job, they're in a position to just burn our name up all over the country. So we don't want to do that. So it needs to be worth my time. It needs to be worth my team's time to be able to work on this. And it's the same amount of time, this account that it would be for like a $200 million account. So, how you have to value your time, and you have to let people know that, this is what my time cost.
Yeah, those are great lessons. And especially, in the early phase of any business, any company, doesn't really matter what type it is, we get caught into those scenarios often. It's like, hey, do I just do this deal for free, or do I, severely discount this? And it seems like more often than not, there's not an appreciation for the level of work. And then it's like, yeah. So thanks for sharing that. I want to do a quick reset of the room before we move forward. So again, we are in the Founder Streams Club. We're live on several different platforms right now, here on Clubhouse, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So you can actually watch us if you want to take a look, and you can also write comments and questions on those other platforms. Please do make sure that you're giving Tiffany a follow and following the club. And we will be opening up the floor to questions here in a little bit. So we have a few more questions. So if you're in the audience and you do have a question, please start raising your hands, and we'll get to you here just shortly. And if you're also watching on a line, you can ask a question there, and we will actually post it here and let everybody hear your question as well. So with that, our next question, Tiffany, wanted to ask you is simply, what do you wish you learned earlier? And, now that you're at where you're at, what would you share to founders, or, startup founders, anybody getting started, that they should do now that you wish you would have done when you were getting started?
So I think I wouldn't change anything, because even the mistakes that I made and the things that I could have done better, they were learning lessons. So now I know what to do, and I'll never make those mistakes again. But I will say, you have to trust yourself. And that sounds very elusive, right? But I can think of times where, because I'm someone who's always open to criticism, always open to great ideas. Like, I want to hear everybody's idea. If I'm not doing something correctly, I want to hear it. If I could be doing something better, I want to hear it. And I think that there's that's good on one sense, but on the other hand, not everybody is your friend, and not everybody wants you to win. So you have to pay attention to who is in your corner. I see Nolan is in the audience. Nolan, I joked with him one time. He's actually my partner in StocSavvy, and we've been friends for the past 16 years. And I said, hey, and he's also on my advisory board. He works with me at Pivotal as well. And I said, I really want you on my team at Pivotal. Could we just call you consigliere? Would that be really hood? And he's like, yeah, that'd be a little bit hood. So I was like, okay, but that's who he is. So there's certain people that I go to for certain advice, and I know that that they want the best for me. But I think along my career, I put value in other people, maybe because of their position, or maybe because of what they, what they looked like. Do you know what I mean? Like, they looked good on paper. They looked like they were super successful. And, I actually had that, in the last firm that I really co-founded. That was the situation that I was in. I had two partners, and there were moments where I didn't trust myself, and I internally thought that they knew more than me, and they didn't. And it was a really interesting kind of coming into myself. And I had to realize, wait, no one at this firm does what I do. They don't know what I do. And I needed to stop looking for, external kind of validation. And I'm not saying don't be open to constructive criticism, definitely do that, but you have to pay attention to that. My dad says, that little voice inside yourself that, when something doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel good. So it's been a journey for me to trust myself and understand that I have value, probably, more value than I thought I had. And I didn't, a year ago. What are we in? We're in June. What are we in? July. A little over a year ago, I launched Pivotal December 15th, but we decided to do that around the summer of 2020. But around March, April, I was like January, February, March, I was in agony. I did not like the situation that I was in. This is before CNBC. I did not like, the company that I was in. we started off a certain way and it just became something else. And I was super unhappy and no one would have ever known that. And like the second that I was like, I didn't know if I could do this on my own. And the good news is I had team members that were like, people that were like, oh yeah, I'm gonna rock with you. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But still, like I'm the one in charge, you know? So I hold all the responsibility, like the ultimate responsibility is mine. And I didn't know if I could do it. And the second I just kind of took that leap of faith and just stepped out on faith, it's like everything started to move. I mean, like John Rogers is on from Ariel Investments is on my advisory board. Like I'm cool with Robert Smith. Like he's giving me advice. Like he's like, Tiffany, check in with me every couple of months. I'm like, okay. All of these things, CNBC happened. All of these things started happening. Like the second I was like, you know what? I'm just going to trust myself and trust that I can do this because anything is better than what I'm in right now. And it just worked.
You know, when you're watching individuals go from working in organizations to then working for themselves, like obviously the self-awareness and this confidence has come for you over time, but what do you think, you know, that transition is not what do you think is like, but what do you think is the most important things, like some of the potholes to watch out for when you're going from working from an organization to working for yourself or to being, whether you're self-employed or whether you become a subject matter expert and other people are relying on you. There are potholes. They're very different from when you're going into work and you're working within a framework to when you got to think for yourself and for other people at the same time. I'd love to know your takeaways.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's really scary. If you've been working, especially if you had a job like mine, where, you know, you had like a paycheck, right? I had a really nice paycheck and, you know, a budget, corporate cars, marketing library, all that kind of stuff. So when I kind of made that leap, I did it with my previous firm. And that was a big leap for me. And I literally didn't get a paycheck for 2.5 years. And I didn't know that was going to be the case. But I like kind of just doubled down on everything, cashed out my 401k. I was like, this is what I'm doing right now. But I think that number one, you have to be prepared unless you're walking into like a contract or a client base, right? Which doesn't normally happen. I mean, sometimes you get lucky. It didn't happen for me. I think you have to be prepared for this to take a while, right? Number one. And number two, you know, one of the things that I always focused on was like, what kind of value are you providing? So I might think that I'm really good at what I do. I might think that I know this. Like, I knew retirement, like the retirement industry and the investment industry. Like I knew how to invest like inside and out. And when it came to retirement and retirement plans and structuring them and building, you know, plan lineups, like I knew there was nobody like better than me. Like I would compete against anybody like for money, right? But still, it was like, why would they pick you and not, you know, all these, you know, hundreds of firms out there that have been doing it for a long time. So it caused me to kind of dig deep and figure out like, what is your value, right? So no matter what industry you're in, if you are, you know, starting this on your own or starting a new company, you've got to be really honest with yourself and make sure that you're providing value. You don't want customers because they feel sorry for you, because that's not going to last. You don't want customers that are just your friends and your family, because that's not going to last. So what are you answering? What problem are you solving? And just making sure, we were actually talking about this the other day, Jonathan, right? Like on the accelerator, listen to your customers, listen to your market and pay attention. You might think you have the best product ever or like the best service ever, but that's you in your head. You need to kind of test that and make sure that you're giving your clients or your customers exactly what they want.
Yeah, I think just, speaking to customers is spot on. And to take a quick step back on what you were talking about just not really feeling, just not being happy in your prior situation. But not only that, like having a little bit of self-doubt in your own ability at first, right? Like that's just so relatable. I've definitely been in that same exact scenario. But, you know, for me, for example, going through that, I feel like is what's been able to give me the strength to move forward. And like, I'm more confident now because of that experience. And it sounds like that's very much the case for you. So, you know, for anybody listening, if you feel like you're in a situation like that, just know that, you know, this is the learning experience as part of it. And you will be stronger and bigger and better because of it. So, you know, we have basically one more question before we get into our rapid fire. And then after the rapid fire, we'll be opening up the stage. So again, if you're in the audience and you have a question, please raise your hand. Or if you're listening or watching live on our other channels, you can ask that question and we'll get to that too. So with that, when it comes to financial literacy, there's, you know, what are some of the best ways that we can get, financial literacy is just more important than ever now. I shouldn't even say it's more important. We're more aware of our financial illiteracy than ever, I should say. And, you know, what are your top resources for getting anyone, whether that's a child or an adult or, you know, a young entrepreneur, to start just becoming more financially literate?
Yeah, I think the first thing is to trust yourself. And so I'm big on specifically calling out like investing. So I think that there are a lot of financial literacy books out there, and I want to, and that's great. I want to distinguish between financial literacy and investing, because I think that they're two separate things. I think that's, you know, financial literacy is something that you can read about. I don't have a particular book in mind, but there are probably tons and tons of books. I think investing, if you're looking to learn more about that, is something that you have to do. So I always tell people, like, you can buy a share of stock, right? It takes nothing to buy a share of stock. Nowadays we have all of these apps that, you know, gamify everything, and you can buy a stock in 2 seconds. You can open up an account and buy a stock in 2 seconds. When I first started in the industry, there's no way you could open up an account online. And it was paperwork. You had to get a driver's license. You had to get a copy of like your driver's license. You had to have all this information. Now you can do it in 3 minutes. So there's no excuse. There are no really barriers to entry for someone starting to invest. And the second that you buy even a fractional share of stock, right? And now we have fractional shares where you don't have to have $3,000 to $4,000 to buy one share of Amazon. You can say, hey, all I have is $50 and I want to invest it. And you can have a fractional share of Amazon. And I think that, you know, once you do that and you start to see, you know, the stock go up and the stock go down, and what's happening in the news when the stock goes up and when the stock goes down. And again, now with all these apps, you see what all the analysts are saying. Oh, 70% of these analysts say that this is a buy, or that you should hold it, or you should sell it. I think it's bringing this professional investor world to the retail investors' fingertips. You know, in 2020, everybody was sitting at home, right? Not working. And we had 10 million new retail investors into the market, and they have significantly influenced the market. And so I love that. I love that people are, you know, are becoming aware of investing and wanting to jump in. The best way to do that, even if you know, I think that people should open up accounts and just start buying some stock. But you can also do it through your retirement plan. So one of the main ways that wealth is created in this country is not through real estate and not through entrepreneurship, right? You would think those are the obvious ones. Those are two ways, but it's really in your retirement plan. And I think people don't really talk about that enough. It's in your employer-sponsored retirement plan. So if you have, if you're fortunate enough, which a lot of people are, to work somewhere where they offer a retirement plan, a 401k, a 403b, 457, blah, 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 invest in it. And if there's a match, definitely invest in that, like invest up to the match. And then just keep putting more in. I mean, there's so many benefits from that, because the money comes out pre-tax. If you're doing more of a traditional contribution, you don't see it, you know, you're not tempted to kind of like, you know, take it out, and it grows tax deferred, but it is it's one of the easiest ways to kind of grow wealth. So I always tell people that. People ask me, oh, how should I start investing? And I'm like, are you contributing to your retirement plan? But yeah, I mean, I think overall, to kind of put a bow on it, is to just start investing in the things that you know, right? Especially women. Women control the majority of the wealth in this country. And that's actually why I started writing stock market commentary geared towards women, because I realized that Wall Street was not speaking to women. And it's StocSavvy, as you guys mentioned earlier. And Wall Street was not speaking to women. And all the messaging to women was about saving, and it was about saving and sacrificing and not about investing. And so I wanted to change that. And so I started writing market commentary every Monday and Wednesday. And it's been really cool to see, women reach out to us and to our team and say, oh my gosh, you explained this so well. I didn't even understand this, but it makes sense when you say it. And to understand, for everybody, not just women, but the things that you buy, not all Americans are investors, but all Americans are consumers. So you have power on both ends in buying stocks and creating wealth, but then also in where you choose to spend your money.
I'm almost wanting to sneak in an extra hour with you just to get that, like, just on financial literacy. I think what you're doing is so incredibly important, and your awareness of the fact that speaking in a way, because it's not, I mean, there's been financial news on television for decades, but the way they speak is not a way that the average person would understand. I love the way you speak, because you make it digestible and in a way that it's like, wait a minute, I understand this. And that almost gives us the permission to be like, wait a minute, I get this. Maybe I can do something. Maybe I can take the next step. And just so grateful to people like you for helping make that step so much easier and with so much more confidence. So thank you, Tiffany, for that. To everyone who has their hand raised, we are going to be coming to you shortly. Right now, though, we're going to go into rapid fire. And there's a couple of interesting questions in here, and I can't wait to hear your take on it. So the first one, Jonathan, are you ready? Oh my God. Because I know why he's doing that, Tiffany, because there's this question that he always wants to ask. So, Jonathan, it doesn't matter. I'll let you ask that question yourself. Don't worry. It doesn't matter who it calls on.
All right.
So first up, Tiffany, rapid fire, just quick answer.
Quick.
Favorite social platform?
Instagram.
Rapid fire. What, Instagram?
I should say Clubhouse, I guess.
All right.
Clubhouse, Instagram.
What's your screen time usage?
Way too much.
Is there a number?
No.
Who's an entrepreneur
don't track it.
Who's an entrepreneur you admire?
Sarah Blakely. She created Spanx.
Who are your top 3 must follows on any platform, regardless of platform? Who must you follow?
Yes, this is really hard. I would have appreciated these questions in advance for a rapid fire. Must follow. This is going to be horrible. Diet Prada, so entertaining. Right. Also, Fashion Bomb Daily. You guys probably thought it was going to be about financial stuff. And CNBC. Oh, you want 5?
No, 3. You got
3.
it.
Okay.
Is that my question now?
That's
Bitcoin,
your question
Doge,
now.
or Ethereum?
Oh, I can't hear you.
Bitcoin, Doge, or Ethereum?
None.
Bitcoin. Okay. You can only listen to one artist for the rest of time. Who's it going to be?
Jay-Z.
Oh.
You knew the answer to that question.
And the last one is the one thing you want everyone to know about you.
I'm a work in progress.
I love that one. You're more than a work in progress. You are definitely a gift to this community, and your insight is just absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. This is the part where we're opening up the floor to our audience to cover any of the bases that we didn't cover. So Eileen, welcome to the stage. We look forward to having your question for Tiffany. Go ahead. The mic is yours.
Hi, Tiffany, fellow New Yorker. The financial background has been great.
Thanks. Yeah, so I actually talked about this a little bit yesterday, and I'll talk about it most likely on Thursday on halftime. So I think that the current environment is, in theory, is conducive to stocks going higher, right? So we've got strong corporate earnings. The Fed is being very accommodative, and we haven't had a correction or a pullback of more than 4% since February of 2020. That being said, there's no rule book. There's no rule that says that we have to have a correction. I think that, speaking of inflation, I do think that it's transitory. And so when I think about it conceptually, I think about this, like if you were to jump, if you were standing on a hard floor and you were to jump, right? Versus you standing on a trampoline and jumping. Of course, in the trampoline, you're going to jump higher because it has give. So you're starting from like a lower point. So when you think about that and inflation and how inflation has been increasing, and there's a lot of chatter about, oh, shouldn't the Fed step in because inflation is going higher? It's like, well, you have to consider where we came from. We just came out of a global pandemic, an economic shutdown, if you will. We've never been in that situation ever before in life, ever. Have we been in hard times? Absolutely. Have we been in recessions? Absolutely. Have we been in event-driven recessions? Yes, but not in a global shutdown where, industries have been totally put on pause. So I do think that inflation is transitory. I think I'm definitely watching that jobs number, as is the Fed. And I think that, they're going to move. I think that the Fed really wants to help people in the way that they can. And they're really waiting for people to get back to work. I do think that there are going to be some challenges because I think people have been sitting at home or, for over a year thinking about, do I even want to go back to this job? So we're seeing that where we don't have a shortage of jobs. We have a shortage of, jobs. We have shortage of people who want those positions. So I think that there's a shift in our workforce right now. And I think that some things will have to change.
Question, Eileen. That's a bit scary, Tiffany, to hear that there are individuals out there. I mean, there are so many opportunities for work, but the people are like, you know what, not up for that. And I know I've heard conversations of people whose offices they're currently employed, but they're saying, if my office is going to force me back into work, into the building, 9 to 5, 5 days a week, I'm quitting.
Well, and you know what, too? I don't think that's because of COVID. I don't think that maybe some people are scared, but a lot of those people are, because I'm hearing the same thing. A lot of those people are people that have been vaccinated. And listen, is there a bit of a fear? I get that. But I really think it comes from a place that people have gotten used to quality of life, managing their own time, having breakfast and lunch with their kids. And they're like, look, I'm happy to do my work. And they've been productive. Overall, people working from home have been productive. But now you want me to go back in an office because you want to watch me. And I think it's actually really exciting. There are more entrepreneurs, more small businesses started in 2020 than in the past 10 years, and I love it.
Exciting times.
Yeah, I agree. I'm the same. I've actually always been just an office rat, get there early, stay there, last one, close it down type of thing, and, not see my family until Saturday and Sunday. Pandemic comes and it's like, oh, I like this a lot. I think it's going to be hard for me to transition to that. So I totally get it. Well, we have a question from LinkedIn. This is actually from Andre, and he asks, What was the song that you practiced over early in your TV appearances?
The song?
Yeah, he goes, what was the song that you practiced early in your TV appearances?
It's probably a Jay-Z song. You mean like a song that I would like play? Wait,
maybe play.
Andre from like the Accelerator?
Andre? Yeah, Accelerator Andre.
Oh, is he talking about the song that I made him I made him like, I was trying to hype him up for his pitch, and I made him listen to a song. I totally forget what that song was, Andre. I'm so sorry. It was either Drake or Jay-Z, but I'll tell you what I do listen to like hype up. Like I listen to Reasonable Doubt all the time before I go into a meeting. Sometimes I listen to 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying. I mean, it's just classic. It just pumps me up. But yeah,
I believe that. I do the same thing. Yep. Hip hop and startups. That's what's up. All right. Well, let's go ahead, and I guess we're kind of coming close to the end, and I don't want that to happen, but we got a couple quick wrap questions for you. And that's simply, what's a question that you'd like to ask our audience that they can think about as they go about their day?
Again, I probably would have loved for you guys to ask me these questions in advance so I could think about really, really good ones. So a question that I want to ask them that they should be thinking about. I think every single morning when you get up, you should be asking how you can add value in a really authentic way to people that you meet, to every connection that you have. And again, like I just kind of go back to saying that like I'm a product of, people picking up the phone and people, when others would ask them, do you know somebody who, and I popped into their head. And I think that happens from, being authentic and being kind to people. But then also, adding value. I don't ever go to someone with like my hand out. Like I always want to know, like, how can I help? So that's something I say a lot, to people that I meet, that I'm first, maybe having lunch with or something, like, oh, what do you do? Who are you? And how can I help?
Adding value, and a lot of people ask themselves, like, how can I add value? And I think it was in those little things that you just said. Our bases are covered. What is coming up, Tiffany, that we should know about?
Gosh, well, Thursday I'll be on halftime. So this Thursday at noon. But everybody should subscribe to StocSavvy. It's free. It's StocSavvy. It comes out every Monday. We market commentary. So we talk about what happened the previous week, and every Thursday, I write it on Wednesday, but every Thursday we glam-splain. So we take a topic, a concept, and we just break it down in a really cool, fun, sexy way. So, and just make sure that you're following me, because we have some other projects that I won't talk about right now, but I'm sure we'll talk more about as they start to unfold. So some really, really exciting stuff coming up, both on CNBC and then also with StocSavvy and Pivotal.
Yeah, you mentioned following you. That was the last question. Sorry, Jonathan. I was going to ask you, where should they follow you?
Yeah, on all channels. I'm Tiffany, Tiffany Invests. Invest with an S on Twitter. I'm Tiffany Invest, not with an S, because that was taken on Instagram. But if you just put Tiffany McGhee, I'll come up. And it's the same thing with LinkedIn. And of course, Clubhouse too. Just Tiffany McGhee.
All right. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining this this evening. It's been a super pleasure to interview you and just learn more about you. I feel like I learn more about you every time we chat. So I'm excited to see you just continue to just to keep taking off and just be like, hey, I knew you when. So thanks for joining us. Paris, any last thoughts before we wind it down?
A masterclass, anytime. You're up for it. I would love to attend. I'll sit in the front row wherever you're at, Tiffany.
Definitely. Yeah, we could definitely talk about some stocks. I would love to do that. It's will be my pleasure. But thank you guys so much for having me. This was super fun. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, for those watching and listening, again, please make sure that you're following the Founder Streams Club. Follow us on our channels as well. We do this every single week. Next week we'll be here next Tuesday. Who's our guest next week, Paris? Mike Fata? Yeah, Mike Fata, the Hemp Heart Titan, will be our guest next week. So definitely join us then. And like I said, we do the Founder Streams Accelerator. We have lots of great content coming at you constantly. So look forward to continuing to get to know folks, and you can reach out to Paris or I if we can be helpful to what you're doing. Hope you all have a fantastic evening, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye. Thanks.